on this beautiful Saturday. My name is Art Donovan, and together with my wife Leslie Tarbell Donovan, we own a company called Donovan Design in Southampton. We do all manner of lighting and illuminated sculptural pieces, and we've been doing that for about 22 years now. My background in design was, I was started in design in the mid-1970s. I was working for toy companies. And back in the 1970s, science fiction and superheroes was a very big part of the toy industry. And now when you work in toys as an artist, you don't just do one thing. When you work for a toy company, they want you to do everything. So you're doing everything from the actual product design, to the packaging, to the lettering, to the illustrations. So if you're an artist working in the toy industry, it's like boot camp for an artist. You learn all kinds of mediums and ways of doing things creatively by hand. In 1990, Leslie and I started our lighting business in design, and that was sort of an offshoot of what we had done together. I worked for Donald in the 1980s. He was the creator of Radio City Music Hall. He was a very big designer in the 1930s and 40s. That gave me a basis for Art Deco and pre-Art Deco design. So going into steampunk here, I had a lot of things in my visual arsenal. You know, I had the science fiction part of the genre, and I also had the Art Deco and pre-Art Deco genres that I was also very familiar with. So back in 2006, I was always looking for new design styles for inspiration. You get inspiration from everywhere, and the internet is by far the greatest place to find anything. So, So I was doing Google searches back in 2006, Google keyword, new design styles. And I was doing the image search, and mid-century modern at the time was covering interior design. That's all you saw, was almost a tyranny of contemporary mid-century modern design. And after a few years, it was lovely. I mean, I was doing it myself, but I was looking for something new. And during my Google keyword search for new design styles, I came across this laptop computer. It wasn't a black plastic laptop computer. It was a laptop that was made of solid mahogany with all kinds of beautiful details and inlaid scroll work. Had little ball and claw feet made out of brass, and the top was decorated in clock gears. You open the thing up, and instead of those black plastic keys, this computer keyboard had those beautiful nickel and glass antique cash register keys, the originals. So it was something like I'd never seen before. It was a fully functioning laptop, and it looked like it was made in the 19th century. The thing that got me is when I saw the video of this thing. It was created by a fellow named Richard Nagy, and he had a big brass key that it was on the Wall Street Journal video. Takes the big brass key in the laptop, sticks the key in the laptop, and he winds it up. And it's clicking and clacking, and that turns the computer on. And I thought that was extremely unusual. In other words, now when we have touch screens and such simple, digital devices, why would anyone want to make something look like it was made in the 19th century? So I started researching steampunk, and I was absolutely thrilled with what I found on the internet. There was an entire world of design that was inspired by the Victorian sciences, inspired by Victorian science fiction literature. And it was called, these are some variations and disciplines in steampunk. Right now, in the past 6 years, it's basically infected every form of creative endeavor. Literature, sculpture, of course the industrial arts, gaming design, steampunk is very big, horology, which is the study and practice of clockwork mechanisms, fashion is very big in steampunk, jewelry design, the digital arts, book design, music. There are actual steampunk bands which take their musical influences from the old English pubs and maybe even going up to vaudeville. It's all a sort of an antique sound. There's a lot of accordions and such. Performance art, tattoo art, interior design, photography, film. It's very big in films. As a matter of fact, Hollywood's been doing it for a really long time. If you think of movies like The Wild Wild West and Terry Gilliam's Brazil, you'll definitely see elements of steampunk design. Very large clockwork devices, steam pipes, things that look like they were created in the 19th century. Rogue taxidermy. Now that's an odd one. Since steampunk is informed by all of the Victorian disciplines, rogue taxidermy was very big during the 19th century. What it was after the voyages of Charles Darwin, and he discovered all these new species in the Galapagos Islands, this was all the rage in England at the time. So if you were an upscale or wealthy English household, you had a thing, not unlike the case in the back there, the mahogany case with the glass, and it was called the Cabinet of Curiosities. And in the Cabinet of Curiosities, you had all sorts of strange relics and skeletal objects. And if you were a wealthy Victorian, you wanted to possess one of the new species that Charles Darwin had discovered. Well, since they couldn't travel to the Galapagos Islands, they had rogue taxidermists create little fantasy species that they could put in their Cabinet of Curiosities. So you could look in the cabinet and you would see a stuffed, taxidermied rabbit with bat wings and a snake tail. And initially they were being passed off as one of the new species that Charles Darwin had brought back. So rogue taxidermy is now being practiced. It is a part of steampunk, and it's as wild and odd now as it was then. What do we have here? The Oxford exhibition that my book is based on was my second steampunk exhibition. I curated it for the Museum of the History of Science at the University of Oxford. And for this exhibition, I gathered 18 of the best global artists in the genre from around the world. When I say around the world, it was truly that. It was everything from the Netherlands to Japan to Russia, all over. And of course, since I don't speak any of the foreign languages, the only way that I could contact these people were through email using Google Translate. So I would draft my letter to the artist explaining that I wanted to have them in an exhibition. I would go to Google Translate, and I would have the letter translated into whatever language they spoke. So I was able to communicate for the first time with all these artists from different languages to have them assemble all their work for the museum exhibition. So again, the internet and of course Google plays a very big part in this genre. Just as an aside, it can certainly be stated that steampunk is the first art movement that was created and conceived on the internet itself. Years ago, or even until recently, before the internet, when artists were gathering together to create a new style or a new genre, they were usually in close proximity to one another. Just like out here, Jackson Pollock and William de Kooning, they all gathered together, they would meet, they would go to bars or coffee houses in Europe. The coffee houses were great places for people to gather, where they could meet, they could discuss their new style, and this new style of art that they were creating would grow, cubism and such. Well, we didn't have that now, but on a global level, all the artists met on the internet itself. So the way they were able to find each other was through Google keywords for news alerts. You can go to Google, go to a news alert, keyword whatever you want for the steampunk genre or the arts, and you would get it as soon as someone would post something on their blog or on a website about steampunk, you would get a news alert about it immediately. So someone in Denmark can post one of their steampunk objects in the morning, and by the afternoon, everyone in the global community involved in steampunk would know about it and see it on the internet, which is a fantastic thing. I don't know how long it would have taken for steampunk to develop if we didn't actually have a computer with the news alerts to alert us on this global level as to what was happening in the arts. For the Oxford exhibition, it was divided into two categories. Sculptural devices, which are basically fantasy devices, of fantasy sculptural works that didn't actually perform any particular type of function. And they consisted of well, sculptural devices. They consist of clocks, watches, lamps, computer modifications, motors, Stirling engines. People would modify iPods. And there was the fantasy sculpture in the exhibition, which were masks, goggles, creative and static sculptures that didn't actually have a function, but they had an artistic form. Jewelry, costume design, and of course cosplay. If you have questions about that, I'll describe it to you. Something that I'm not involved in. These are some of the steampunk artists and some of their artworks. Now, I don't know if this is going to play by itself. This is one of the keyboards, one of the computerized keyboards, one of the many styles with the glass and nickel keys. Okay, this is not going. All of the artists assembled for the Museum of the History of Science, I only had one prerequisite from the museum, from Dr. Bennett, and he said, you can do whatever steampunk you want, but the pieces that you select need to...
Thin white dupe.
The thin white dupe, that's one of our lamps, thank you. Whatever pieces I assembled, they needed to complement the museum's permanent collection of antique and ancient scientific devices. So, although there was a great variety of works I could include for the museum, it left out a whole world of steampunk design that I wanted to include, such as fashion and jewelry and things of that nature. So it was basically actual objects that worked. There's the keyboard, there's the brass key that turns the thing on. They were all sculptural, scientific-looking devices. And this exhibition, it was held from October through February at the Museum of the History of Science at the University of Oxford. Now, I was new to curating, and I had never really worked with other artists. I worked myself as an artist, but I had never assembled people in any one place. It was an unusual experience. When we got to Oxford, Dr. Bennett said, would you like to give a talk, a lecture, here at Oxford? And I said, well, I could certainly talk about it. I know enough about these artists. So during the opening night of the Oxford exhibition, I was in a room, their great hall at the museum. Now, this is a real old-school museum. The Museum of the History of Science is the oldest purpose-built museum in the world. I think they built it in the 1500s. So it doesn't look like any of the new museums you see now. The huge, thick stonework and oak staircases and stained glass, it was something right out of a movie. I was in their great display room. And the display room, again, had those wonderful, wonderful wooden cabinets, light cabinets of curiosities that went to the ceiling with all the decorative work on the ceiling. Very large wall, very, very ancient looking. It was very intimidating. And the intimidation didn't stop there. When I was at the podium, I looked at the back of the Great Hall. So there I am lecturing at Oxford, something I never expected to do. And on the back wall of the exhibition room, there was a blackboard, big blackboard with hand-scrawled mathematical equations. And this was Einstein's original blackboard when he would lecture at Oxford, staring at me. Staring down. I'm glad they didn't erase it. And there it is staring at me, and it was a very weird and unusual feeling to be lecturing in the same place that Einstein himself had stood in and lectured. It's like the words, "What am I doing here?" actually walked through my mind. But it was a lovely evening, and I was able to explain all of the artists and all of their works. There's a couple of things that I do want to read that kind of explain the genre a little fuller. This is from an article by Simone Cortez Gray. She states the following: although it's technocentric in styling, steampunk design is definitely not just a boys' club of enthusiasts. The wide appeal for its fans and creators are equally divided among men and women, young and old alike, from around the world. Websites dedicated to the style, such as Sarah Brumfield's Steampunk Home, feature the most current steampunk designs applied to everything from architecture to product design to home accessories. Ms. Brumfield says, steampunk is finding an artistic method to combine the past with the future in an aesthetically pleasing way by taking the detritus of modern technological society and remaking it into something useful and unique as an object. No longer satisfied with the injection-molded plastic design of today's mass-produced products, steampunk artists are crafting a romantic new standard of modern goods, using traditional 19th century materials applied to 21st century technology. These artists prefer the transparent honesty of the handcrafted object, and with a surprising disregard for the de rigueur stylings of contemporary fashion, they boldly embellish their work with all manner of historic design references and ornate technological flourishes. Now, of course, you would think, if we have something like a computer, why would we need to take this particular device and make it ornate? I mean, it's great in plastic, it works wonderful, you can produce a gazillion of these, you can sell them rather cheaply. Why would anyone make this one? Why would anyone want to make this out of brass and mahogany and put so much work into it? The answer to that question is from Rich Nagy, one of my artists from the show. He designs all of the computerized keyboards, the actual moddings for the computer towers, the keyboards, and of course the screens. And Steve Nagy says, these computer designs, as unique and beautiful as they are, beg the obvious question. Why would anyone want to design a computer or laptop to look like it was made in the 19th century in the first place? Well, on his website, Nagy provides a surprisingly serious and eloquent answer. He explains that the computer, along with all modern digital devices, were truly robbed of their novelty period. He states, the home computer was denied what I feel to be the proudest time in the life of any technological device. It was robbed of that fleeting, wonderful period right after invention, where it would normally be celebrated and honored by the finest craftsmen, artists, and creative minds, and given a structure befitting its potential and greatness. When the steam train roared into history, hissing smoke and howling in the night, it was an awesome beast, adorned in the finest woods, ivory, and gold, and intricate brassy inlays, like some serpent king on a sacred tapestry. The automobiles from the 20s to the 60s, each was a work of art. The television and radio affected the world in more ways than could be imagined, changing the entire dynamic of human social structure and communication. And they were both appropriately gifted with the most lavish of hand-tooled, scrolled cabinetry, which borrowed artistic details from the grandest school of architecture and design. Sadly, though, the personal computer, which has impacted the world more profoundly than probably all of the previously mentioned inventions put together, never received the same kind of treatment. It is true, due to the modern methods of mass production and the need to cheaply produce billions of units, modern design now suffers from an androgynous digital silhouette, whereby one cannot visually tell the difference between a cell phone or remote or flat-screen TV or computer.